Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Good afternoon, beer geeks. It's Friday. It's 4pm. Oh,
Nice.
got it wrong. There was a hilarious comment on our Instagram from somebody who referenced something we'd said in the Friday 5pm podcast. And when he said, I heard it on this podcast, it was on Friday, I can't remember what time. And that made me ruffle whatever else I was doing, avoiding work while on Instagram. I should name who said that, but it was very funny. I'll put it in the show notes if I remember. Bradley, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm still a little bit under the weather from last week, but it's my own fault this week because I've been swimming in the sea down in Kent, East Kent. I've been drinking in micro pubs and sitting outside of an evening when it's been very, very cold.
You've been being the classic British tourist.
Yeah, pretty much, mate. Yeah. So
in the independent nation of Kent,
exactly,
because they're putting a hard border in due to Brexit. We've gone from 0 hard borders to 2.
Oh, blimey. Yes, so hard borders. Yeah, in Thanet, which is kind of like the home of UKIP, or it was. But now it's, there's lots of progressive sort of arty people that live in Margate. And I've been down there for a few days. Margate, Ramsgate, Broadstairs. I did a micro pub tour on the local bus there, the Loop bus, with my girlfriend.
Nice,
and a friend.
We've always wanted to do that for a video, and we haven't got around to it yet. But that would be a lot of fun.
We're going to do it because there's like 30 micro pubs within this peninsula of East Kent, and it's just cool, man. Like they're all totally different vibes in each one. They've all got their own flavour. So that was great. And then I was in Faversham, which is home to Shepherd Neame, a very historic beer town, and I was drinking yesterday. I think this is why I may be a bit ill, apart from dunking in the sea. I was drinking at this place called the Ship. What's it called? The Ship. I've forgotten what it's called. The
Shipwrights Arms.
The Shipwrights Arms, which is in Hollowshaw, which is basically in the middle of nowhere. You go out over this amazing marshland, and you end up in this sort of meandering river, which comes in from the sea. It's an estuary, and it goes all the way into Faversham. And this place has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It looks like an old pirate ship inside, and actually pirates used to hang out there because it was like a sheltered bay. And they in all honesty, pirates used to drink at this pub, and it feels like that. It's still this otherworldly sort of outback place in the middle of nowhere. And I was drinking.
It's very much your aesthetic, isn't it? Like hipster pirate.
I love it. Yeah, pirate life for me, definitely. And it was. I just had a great time. It was very romantic, just sitting on this riverbank. Last time I was there, I was watching historic Thames barges, like wooden barges, that were coming out of a shipyard that still builds wooden, classic wooden sailing boats and barges and stuff, and repairs them, just next door. And drinking a pint of Gocher's Shipwrecked, which you can only get in that pub and about 2 other pubs. It was just an awesome beer experience, mate. And I know one day we'll get to do that together, man. So that's what I've been up to, Johnny. Basically, fannying about in East Kent, living the pirate life. What have you been up to this week, mate?
Well, I've been working, Brad. So on Monday, I went down to Finch Hampstead, which is just south of Reading, in Woking, technically. And I went to visit Elusive Brewing, which is founded by Andy Parker, who lots of people on the podcast might know. He's sort of a bit of a homebrew hero. He was a homebrewer for a good couple of years, won a lot of awards, and sort of built a little profile that way. And he actually won a $5,000 prize in a homebrewing competition and used that to put a deposit down for a brew kit and founded a brewery called Elusive. So we went down to visit him because I'm planning our next homebrew exploit, which is going to be pumpkin beer, which I guarantee you half of the people listening have just gone, yay, and half of the people listening have just gone, that's the worst news we've ever been given on this podcast, including Small Brewers Relief being revoked. So yeah, an incredibly divisive style of brewing, but we revel in controversy. We'll get to that when we get to our video in a sec. But so I went down there to learn and get a really great homebrew recipe from him that we'll be sort of adapting, putting our twist on, and then releasing sometime around Halloween.
Nice.
And while I was down there, I also recorded finally another episode of The Bubble.
Oh.
So we do have a long-form podcast in the works, probably next Sunday, with Andy, that's full of tips about homebrewing, his journey through homebrewing, his journey of setting up what's still a very, very micro brewery. I think he's pushing 1,000 hectolitres, so very, very small. And we sort of hear all of his journey and discuss it, and there's lots of tips in there if you're a homebrewer as well. So that should be a really nice crossover episode. Like, we try not to talk about beer too much in the Bubble episodes, but, homebrewing's a nice little aside. And Andy's one of the nicest humans on earth and a very fun chap to chat to as well. So that will probably be out next Sunday. I'm making no promises. Currently the workload is a bit extreme, which is why also our Patreons haven't got their patches yet, but they are going out Monday next week, aren't they, Brad?
Oh yes, we'll be round.
Monday
I'll be round
next
at yours,
week.
and we'll be writing out names and addresses on envelopes for a good
something
few
like
hours.
300 envelopes.
Yeah.
And while I was actually down there, while I was visiting Andy and having a lot of fun opening a lot of tins of pumpkin and accidentally inhaling quite a lot of cinnamon and then sneezing a lot, the owner of Siren came around to say hey, and then he gave me a quick tour of... So I think I haven't been to Siren itself. I've been to the tap room, but I haven't been round the brewery for about 5 years. And they have got massive... I didn't ask his actual size, but I think it's probably, maybe it is over 20,000 hectolitres at this point. But they've got outside tanks, endless inside tanks. Their barrel store is amazing. It's on a first floor.
Wow.
Which has probably an issue that everybody here has recognised, which is the weight. So initially they were going to stack them, and they got some structural engineers in who went, you can't stack barrels on a first floor. So their entire barrel store is all on one level. So you walk out into this room and it smells of oak and vanilla and sherry, and it's amazing. And then you look out and it's just a sea of endless barrels. It's the most incredible sight, like so much more impressive than if you stack them almost, because when you stack them you can't see all the barrels. With this one it's just an ocean of wood. It's amazing.
I'm sort of picturing I don't know why I'm picturing the X-Files and Mulder and Scully walking around in a giant sort of alien tent where they're watching, all these barrels that have potentially got different kind of things in them, and they're kind of mooching around. It seems I can imagine you with one of those very strong what are they called, torches, and the beam like shining around. It sounds awesome.
I mean, they did have lighting, but if I could have had a torch, it would have really added to the atmospherics that were in that room.
You needed a torch, and you needed a long overcoat, and you needed a ginger lady,
a ginger sidekick.
Yes.
Instead, I had Darren, the founder, who is neither a lady nor ginger, but a very gracious host.
Great.
So yeah, if you're ever in the Finch Hampstead Reading area, it's well worth there. Siren and Elusive are on the same industrial estate, so you can visit both. They both have tap rooms that open on a Saturday, so you could go down there and visit them both, and it's well worth it. I don't know whether Siren do tours. Elusive probably do, because all you do is stick your head inside and that'll be the tour.
Wow.
But if Siren do, it's well worth seeing. It's quite an industrial site though. They're well packed in, so probably it might be a bit too dangerous for tours just for the public. But yeah, that was my Monday. That was lovely. And yeah, we'll have some content coming out of that pretty soon, starting next week. Shall we move to the video?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
So this was our first video in 2 weeks. That was a long break. I don't think we missed an upload this year up until this point, which for those who have been watching the Craft Beer channel for a while is quite a feat. We used to be sporadic before I quit my day job and took it mostly full time. And yeah, it does you do drop out of the algorithm, and it can affect you pretty badly when you miss a lot of episodes. So we didn't want to keep that run going too much, but missed 2 uploads, and we're back with a bang with Thornbridge, which I thought would be welcomed with trumpets and people fainting with excitement. But instead, it's turned out quite controversial.
Yeah, it's
which
it's weird. It's a weird one. I mean, I don't personally get it, but Johnny, go on.
Well, I mean, so there is some controversy around the wife of one of the owners, which I don't want to get into because A, the facts aren't straight, and B, I just don't think that a business should be judged by the behaviour of somebody who has nothing to do with the business. Although, full disclosure, the brewery did found at their giant house. But the main controversy that was certainly in the YouTube comments, Facebook picked on the politics and YouTube picked on the beers. Twitter just went, "Hey, that's cool," and then moved back to just shouting at each other. Yeah, the controversy was people seem to think that Thornbridge are a very average brewery, which I understand from the point of view in that they do not make. They don't make very, very big, incredibly hoppy, punch you around the chops kind of beers. They don't really indulge in any of the pastry fun. So they have made beers like Cocoa Wonderland, which had cocoa nibs. They do barrel age, and they do make some wonderful sours, particularly Flemish reds. But they're not making the kind of hype styles.
No.
And that, sadly, I think means that a lot of people write them off.
Do you think it's the fact that you can now get like Jaipur and Green Mountain and stuff in supermarkets? Do you think people are kind of hating on that because they think it's too popularist? And obviously,
yeah,
Thornbridge have been around for donkeys, so I think there's that thing where everyone wants what's new and shiny, and you kind of can forget how good something is if it's been around for a long time. Or, think they're not as innovative because they're large and they're successful.
Yeah, I think maybe that they're very known for Jaipur, which I think is an absolutely beautiful West Coast IPA, very much in the mould of those, like Russian River's Pliny and Blind Pig, Racer 5, stuff like that. That it has a lot of hop character to it. It has pine and citrus and grapefruit to it, but it's kind of intertwined with that malt character. There's either Munich or crystal malt character to it, and it's not sort of fallen off a hop cliff. It's still a very balanced beer, and I think there's definitely lots of people that don't recognise that as an IPA anymore.
So it's more like the world of IPA has changed around them, and they've although they do have like. Nipas and stuff, don't they, as well? But they've stayed pretty faithful to Jaipur and the West Coast traditional kind of stuff. Which, to be honest, I love drinking that style. So,
Yeah, well, they approach it for. Well, sorry, I just finished my point in that I think that because they're very known for those styles, I think the other styles that they make get forgotten, and because they're available in supermarkets, I think people forget that actually, if you go onto their web shop, there's probably 10, 15 different beers of a huge variety of different styles that are as good as anything else made by the smaller, trendier. I was going to say modern guys, but Thornbridge were founded in 2005. They're by no means an old business. What's that? 15 years. So yeah, the other thing is, I feel like Jaipur, because it's their most famous beer, completely dominates their narrative, whereas they do make lots of juicy New England style beers, and their hopping rates are much lower, and the beers are still much more balanced than, say, you'd get from a Verdant or a Cloudwater. But it's still incredibly well made and delicious, and it does slap you around the face. They have some really, really big IPAs out there, and they make stuff like Mango Halcyon, which is a mango West Coast double IPA and stuff like that. And I think maybe people forget that and they assume that Jaipur Lucas is all they do. But also Lucas, for my sins, I'm a great fan of Camden Hells. I think it's a brilliant beer, and it's got better since the buyout, even though I try not to drink it. Sometimes you've got no choice. But I actually think Lucas is a significantly better beer. Yeah. A significantly better German Helles. So if I could, I'd be drinking Lucas over Camden Towns. I'd be drinking it over Lost and Grounded Keller Pils. I'd be drinking it over Don Zoco Helles. I just think it's better than all of those. I think it's the best Helles in the country. And it frustrates me that people miss out on that because they're sort of sucked into that narrative of Thornbridge being a supermarket brand now. Which, some of their beers are. And in fact, Lucas is one, but that doesn't mean it's not a good beer.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've got to always keep our eyes and our hearts open to stuff, and like just because something's successful, it's like when you've got your favourite band that you've grown up with, and they're like a small indie band or something, and they become a stadium rock band or whatever. They become a huge band, and then suddenly you fall out of love with them. It doesn't mean they're not amazing still. It's just they've moved on, or you've moved on, or you have a sort of romantic view of how they should be, and that just isn't life sometimes.
And I think it's really tough with music and with breweries. Like, you get annoyed because they change. Like Kings of Leon went from their like kind of strangled vocalist American alt country to stadium fillers. But if they just continued making strangled alt country, everyone would have been like, "Oh, Thornbridge, Kings of Leon, they're one-trick ponies. Like, they can't change sound and all this kind of stuff." And I feel like, the same is said of a lot of breweries that get very, very big and start doing new stuff. They're like, "Oh, they're just, they shouldn't be trying to do all this geeky stuff." Or if they don't try to do all the geeky stuff, people are like, "Oh, they're just a supermarket brand now." And I think that actually Thornbridge have played it kind of perfectly. They have a bit of both. You can go to their web shop and get a mango double IPA, or you can go to the supermarket and get a 4-pack of Helles for probably £6.
I think that's any brand would think that is a dream endpoint to be, where you've still got that creative freedom, but you have an overwhelming success as well on a large scale. So, mate, I was actually thinking Kings of Leon. I didn't say Kings of Leon, but that was what my band analogy was. So it's good to know we're on the same page there.
And we also agree that their new stuff does kind of suck.
It does kind of suck.
For us, it kind of sucks, but for other people, it's brilliant. I went to see them live, probably only 4 or 5 years ago, because there were some really cheap tickets, because I don't think it had sold very well. It was one of the Hyde Park festivals. I forget what it's called.
Yes,
I went there, and really, and it was like, the crowd was so young and so not like me, and then there were sort of some old fogies like me and Heather, just like who are these people and why aren't they playing anything from Aha?
Yeah, man.
But there we go. This is not a music podcast, and people can still love Kings of Leon if they want to. Yes. Which is our point here. Brad, you were people think that Thornbridge have maybe kind of sold out and become a supermarket brand, but like you said when we were just chatting before the podcast started, it's interesting that they believe, and they probably could just be a Jaipur factory if they wanted to be. And they haven't gone down that road.
That's it. So that for me, they haven't. They could have done the easy thing, which was just like, okay, this is what's working, so we'll just do this. But they are still pushing the envelope a bit, and it's just because people are. Your view is totally guided by your experience in life. And if you're just meandering around a supermarket and you're seeing Jaipur, you're seeing Lucas, whatever, and then you're going into a cool local independent bottle shop and you're seeing all these other brands that are doing similar stuff, you're going to put more credence and feel that they're more authentic. than something you might see in a supermarket, and that doesn't, that I mean, I'm a kind of populist. I think that everything is, if it's good, it's good, and that's, I think we can get a bit navel gazy about why something's good and why something's bad, and it's not fair sometimes that the way that is judged.
Yeah, of course. Although we should say, with all the stuff that we've put on the channel recently, we should say if you don't need to buy from a supermarket, don't. Go direct to the brewery or go to your independent bottle shop and buy it. And that is controversial. I believe that supermarkets do have a place in craft beer, but I think we should be supporting the independents wherever we can, and I think breweries should be doing more to do that too. So we didn't read out any specific comments for that one, just because there were sort of lots of comments about how the beers were bang average, overrated, tasted metallic, which is not something I've ever associated with a brewery famous for its consistency and quality, even if it's not the kind of beer that you like to drink. But there we go.
No.
Let's move on. So we've got another recorded question.
Oh, I love these.
We've only had one, but I'm glad you're in love with it already. Love at first sight from Brad.
I've been trying to push it from day one, mate. You have.
Finally
just coming to
working.
fruition. Yay.
Yeah. So if you do have a question, please just use QuickTime on your computer or whatever the PC version of that is, and just record a quick 30-second question for us, and we'll play it, and then we will answer it with aplomb. And this question, I think this question could get derailed quite quickly. This is from Finn from over in Australia. Let's see what his question is.
Hey boys, Finn from Australia here. I was listening to the podcast and noticed that you guys asked for voice questions, so I thought I'd send one in. I was just wondering if you guys have ever tried any of the brews from Australia. I live in Melbourne personally, and around my 5-kilometre radius there's probably at least 8 really great breweries, which is convenient because we can't go any more than 5 kilometres from our house at the moment. Was just wondering if you guys had ever had a chance to check them out. Love your stuff.
Thanks, Finn. Australian beer in the UK. Obviously, there's a big issue around that because it has to travel a long way, which means that it's rarely in the absolute best condition. But we have a thing called the New Zealand Collective over here, where a bunch of New Zealand breweries have come together and started shipping stuff over all together. So we do get quite a bit of New Zealand beer in, and obviously Yeasty Boys came over and targeted this market specifically, and now Stu, who's one of the founders, lives over here and runs that business and does it pretty well. I think they're doing about 4,000 hectolitres of beer, 3,000 or 4,000. But in terms of Australian beer, there was a phase, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember, I feel like it was almost 10 years ago, drinking Little Creatures in my local at the time, which was the Royal Albert in New Cross, and just thinking it was great. But that was a long time ago. I think they disappeared and then they came back. They've now got their own brew pub in King's Cross in London, which I've eaten there and it was very good. And some of the beers I had were very good there as well. But you don't really see it out in the trade, out in pubs at all anymore. No. I've got a non-craft beer Australia related story I can tell, Johnny.
Go on then.
So, this would have been approximately 10 years ago. My sister won a competition on Capital Radio, and me and my sister and my dad flew out to Sydney for Australia Day celebrations. And the whole trip was sponsored by Foster's. So when we arrived at this very, very swanky hotel, I opened up the minibar fridge, and it wasn't full of miniatures and Kit Kats and all the sort of normal stuff you'd get in a nice hotel minibar. It was full of cans of Foster's, mate.
That's a nightmare.
So
I've had nightmares like that.
This is before pre-craft beer channel. I still knew better than to drink it, so I didn't touch any of them. But it was a really surreal trip that I had to Oz. This was a lovely hotel. I think it was the Hilton. And almost immediately when I arrived, I saw a silhouette that I recognised sitting on a doorstep of the hotel. it was Jarvis Cocker, and he was touring in Oz at the time.
I was going to say, I thought he was going to be another competition winner.
No, I think he probably doesn't need to enter competitions if he wants to go somewhere. But I had a lovely little chat with Jarvis on a hotel doorstep for a little while, probably 5 minutes, and I just talked about going to art school and how I loved his music. And
Common People references the art school you went to, isn't it?
Yeah, St Martin's College. So, you know, I was kind of in awe of him, and he's such a nice guy. And then to put that into contrast, another sort of hero of mine was staying there as well. Nick Cave, who, you know, I think is awesome, and his music's phenomenal. But he was. This sort of sounds like I'm making it up, like it's a wild, like the fish was this big kind of story. But literally, I was sat in the hotel bar with my dad of one evening. We were drinking, I don't know, gin and tonic or something at the bar. I'd been out that day on Sydney. I don't know what it's called. The Sydney, you know where Sydney Harbour is, in the harbour on a boat. And stupidly, I hadn't put enough sun cream on, and half of my face was burnt to a frazzle. So I looked like Two-Face. I had kind of like a real lobster kind of pink side and then a normal side. And Nick Cave was sat in the bar on a piano, sort of playing piano ditties and a little bit of singing, not a lot of singing, but a bit of singing. So I was just like, whoa. First of all, I was like, wow, amazing. And then I sort of looked at him a bit closer. He was wearing Pringle golf wear, head to toe, in kind of pastel pink and all these mad colours, which I thought for like a goth guy, that was a very odd look, but it kind of looked amazing. But while we were sat at the bar, I'd had a few beers at this point, I could actually hear him talking to his mate and sort of gesturing at me and saying that these pom idiots come over here and they don't wear suntan, you know, not suntan, but sun lotion to protect their faces. And he's
not wrong, is he?
He ridiculed me to his friend Johnny, and I felt so bad. You know, I was like, oh my god, like met a hero, and he's actually shunned me. So
on the plus side, maybe you're the inspiration behind the song is Red Right Hand, but he's protected your identity.
Wow.
By making it hand, not face.
Wow. I'd love to think so, because, you know, we all love Peaky Blinders, and that is such an iconic start to a series. Mate, I've never thought of that before. Maybe I'll start claiming that I am the inspiration for Red Right Hand. That'll piss him off.
Nick Cave stole my identity.
Yes.
There you go. Well, there's the podcast title right there. Nick Cave stole my identity. Back to the question from Finn. So we've had Little Creatures, we've had Stone and Wood Pacific Pale Ale, had a Little Phase. I think it still comes over. But otherwise, there's not been a lot of Australian beer washing up on our shores. I think
Pirate Life.
Because... Well, yeah, Pirate Life. So I've got a funny... Pirate Life, they're now owned by AB InBev, but they made some good beer for a bit, sort of West Coasty, modern stuff. My funny story about meeting Pirate Life is I went to a tap takeover ages and ages and ages ago when they were trying to break the UK market. And I went to taste their beers and I met the guys there. And I turned up and I was going there just for a drink, and then I was meeting my girlfriend for a date, and I bought my girlfriend some flowers. And I turned up, and one of the guys at Pirate Life genuinely thought I brought him flowers. So I had to explain, like, I don't turn up to tap takeovers with flowers for the brewers.
Wow.
But their beer was good. I don't know what it's like now. I don't think they're in the UK market. I'm sure they're just disrupting and ruining lives for small independent businesses in Australia now. But the beer was nice. There's also Feral Brewing is one that I'm aware of as being quite a hypey brewery, I think, over in Australia. They had a beer, hazy, like they brewed one of the first hazy IPAs, I think, that are big. And there's a couple of mixed firm breweries. I think 10 Feet Tall Brewery and something about Le Siren Brewing or something that we've never tried, but sort of word, Chinese whispers comes across the oceans of amazing breweries in Australia that we've never encountered. So Finn, let us know who's amazing, and hopefully one day we'll make it over there, because it does have an incredible scene, and so does New Zealand, and we'd love to come to that part of the world.
I think since we started the channel, almost day one, we kind of said, where would we love to go if this ever took off? And we certainly said West Coast of America. I know New Zealand was in there for sure. We've said
it was, yeah.
And also Japan. So we've still got these places that we super want to go to. The other side of the world, mate. That's the thing, isn't it? Are you going to South Africa? It's going to be a long time before we Is that still happening?
No, that was supposed to be in August. I was supposed to be speaking at a conference in South Africa, but that obviously got cancelled. You couldn't even drink in South Africa during lockdown. So there was going to be a digital version of the conference, and I think even that got scrapped. So hopefully, maybe next year, if things have calmed down, maybe I'll be able to go to South Africa and do that and make some content. They've got some great beer and some hops, great hops as well from South Africa. So, we haven't done all of our bucket lists yet by a long way. So this channel has a long time left to run before we're done.
Hell yeah.
And in the meantime, we've got lots of delicious homebrew content coming while we can't travel properly. So if you're an Australian, please do let us know what's amazing. Finn, please do send us another recorded message, either more questions or just tell us who's great for our audience. And if you've got a question, please do send it to our email address. It's craftbeerboys@gmail.com. We did not come up with that email address. That was the third member who left. I hate it every time I say it, but you can reach us there. That's it for this week. It's probably our longest podcast ever, Bradley. You're on good ramble form. So, yeah, we will speak to you guys. We've got a video coming on Wednesday. It's an exciting one. And then we'll have another podcast next week. And indeed, hopefully, the bubble coming on Sunday. So lots of CBC content coming at your ear holes very soon. Love and beer, guys. The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer channel. Head to youtube.com/the Craft Beer channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craftbeer channel. Love and beer.